All right, so working out some kinks. This is first stream trying to figure everything out here. But welcome. My name's Jared. I'm, as you can see, Pyre Knight Press, and I've been writing adventures for a little bit, and I thought I would just share my process with whoever's willing to watch and interested in starting to write RPGs. So this is the concept I have for my next adventure. And I was just going to stream for about 2 hours and we'll see what happens. If you guys are interested, if you have comments, talk to me in chat and we'll try to pay attention to that as I go. So, as you can see, this concept I have is an adventure that's going to be part of a session 0, but after people have created their characters. And this idea came from watching a couple movies and things where it was more interesting to see from the side of the bad guy. So part of this setting that I have for my homebrew world is based upon a war that happened about 500 years ago. About 500 years ago. And that's the premise for most of what happens in the setting currently. As part of the session 0, I was thinking it would be interesting to have some connection to that prior war and how it affected people today. So we're going to be starting that here. So got some things here I got to work out. Let's see. I have 2 monitors here trying to work together. All right. Here, I think I've got some setup stuff done finally. Get some people in here. All right, just gonna start working through. I might go quiet a little bit. I'll make sure to pay attention to chat. So the big influential war was called the Material War in my setting. So basically where the fiends, basically demons and devils, try to pierce the veil into the material realm, or for my setting, call it the realm of the mundane, or mundane realm. And basically corrupt it and take it over as another part of their realm, spreading their influence. That was 500 years ago, and because of that, we have some effects that influence today's world. And we'll get into that later on. Just gonna work out some bare bones, some of those nerves out, and then keep going. Yeah, Google. Get some quick point stuff. Form out. Thank you very much, Pierre. Means a lot. Open my streams. Go. 2 nations, man, forceful together. Setting instead. Some of my notes here, so. Oh, it's my review I should put in. So this is kind of the big part of the adventure, the main reason why I think people would be interested in doing it. It's a little bit of a twist on what typically a session 0 starter is, where people are influenced, or the players rather, come together and they're your basic, oh yes, I found this mission and I am now in this tavern. You said you're looking for this mission? Oh, I guess we are now friends and we are on this mission together. Instead of that semi-awkward, because we all agree around the table that we're going to do this, we're going to play this game, we're going to be a part of a group together. Instead of doing that, I thought it would be interesting to play with some of the players or the player characters' histories and connect them a little bit through that. And that connection is this adventure. At the end of this adventure, this reveal is that one or two, or maybe even all of them, depending on the way that you choose to play the adventure, all of them are having dreams of this war. And they don't remember this war because it was 500 years ago. It's at a point where the world is kind of continued and forgotten about the material war. But they're having these dreams, and suddenly somebody else they know has the same dream, or memories of being another creature and doing some awful, terrible things. So it's taking this adventure of, from the demon perspective in this war, being the bad guys from the beginning. And then at the end of the adventure, you turn to one of the players and you say, you have these strange dreams of this war that took place. You think you were one of the characters, you think you're one of these demons, and you don't understand why. So you're in search for answers behind these dreams. And then you would go into session 1 or session 2 and start to play it. So that's what I was thinking. So hopefully the internet sorts itself out. But so the reveal. Let's just say want answers. So first, what I was thinking of is delving into some of these potential demons that would be inside of this adventure. And I think it would be, instead of saying, oh, you're a spine devil, you're a horn devil, choosing to just make my own and creating some demon characters that could come up as enemy creatures later on in the campaign. But as for now, we would make them as characters. We'll just give them a couple abilities and maybe a stat block at the end of the adventure. Instead of making the players make 2 different character sheets, you get them to make their character and then hand them one of the stat sheets, stat blocks for these demons and say, you're going to be this for the first session, you're going to be this for the first session. Go from there. So, a couple different types of demons I was thinking of. I want to use some of them as an example, so maybe a spine devil, something small that flies, but I don't really like their flavoring, so maybe we could change it somehow to something else. So let's say typical ones, let's say small, there's a medium, there's a large, maybe there's a flyer, and let's leave it with 5 for now, 4 for now. So something else about small. We'll go really quick. 2 attacks. And I will figure out all this stuff at the end. I just want to get some of this through, done with. I want these demons to feel threatening, but I don't want them to feel all powerful. Give them a couple cool, unique abilities, but something that if I choose to make these creatures for my setting later on, they're not going to be some crazy CR20 something. Something small that maybe about level 5 or 6 when the setting starts to pick up, some of the campaign story kicks in, and some of the fiends start to show themselves. Maybe one or two of these things show their way. One that's quick, one that's humanoid, one that's monster-like, or let's say fiend, I guess. This one with 3 attacks. The flyer is going to be small. It's going to have 1 attack. Let's have him make 1 condition. And to me, that means 1 kind of ability that changes the environment or maybe makes a condition effect like poisoned or paralyzed or something similar to that. Okay. Let's try to make some sense of this. One second. Again, if you guys have any questions or don't understand my rambling, by all means, post in chat. See if I can keep up with it. Let's do some basic story beats that I know should be in here. Put that there. Actually, let me go over this once more now that I've got some time to think. Just gonna kind of shut my head off, ignore that I'm streaming for the first time, and hopefully get some stuff done. So if I stop talking, I apologize. So, should put in here the premise of it. So the premise is going to be set up for my Charu setting, which is the name of my setting, Charu Primer, I guess, which is going to be coming out hopefully this year at some point, which is just a little bit of a campaign setting guide that I'm going in the middle of writing and editing, working on right now. Let's see. This adventure will release shortly before or after the primer, and it is going to be for D&D Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition and released on Drive-Thru RPG. That's where I set all my work. Speaking of, if you want, you can go to Drive-Thru RPG, search Pyro Press or Pyronide Press, and you'll find my 4 adventures there. Minstrel of Misery, Prospects of the Forgotten One, there's Visions of Vanity, and For Whom the Bell Tolls. All 4 of them are currently free for the end of the month, doing a little birthday special. And April 1st, they will be going up to probably $1. So when I'm working, I often end up stopping and rethinking and working things through and reorganizing things. For me, that's normal. Some people can work straight through. Some people revise halfway through. I'm constantly thinking of what goes where, what would look better where. I'm trying to at least organize my thoughts better. This doesn't really make sense, so let's reword this. All the rest of the formatting I've been doing. This adventure, turn to 1 or more. Say their character. And for some players, they could decide if that's 1 week, if that's a month. Some characters might even be interested in having this be a thing that their character has always said, and maybe their character did as the crazy person in the village. Well, now that's their opportunity to kind of prove themselves, and they've decided, I'm going to find meaning behind my dreams. And they're off and they're adventuring. Part of this, part of the reason of connecting players in this way and creating this session 0 adventure is because in my experience, which comes from teaching mostly fresh new players who've never played Dungeons and Dragons, who've never even heard of tabletop role playing, and they don't see it more than a board game. I just roll the dice, I play the game, I win, right? I can win Dungeons and Dragons. And as we all know, you can't really win at a tabletop role-playing game, there's choices and consequences, and it's a little different than winning and losing. So with this adventure, I was thinking of hopefully it will help those new players connect with their characters more on more of a meta level or more of a subconscious level, maybe. Get them thinking about how their characters connect to the story more than just, I am a farmer now and I want to be a dragon killer, which is okay. But in my experience with new players, that only gets them so far. And because they're level 1 and haven't fought really a dragon, it's not what they wanted, it's not what they were thinking of. So they get bored and quit, or bored and don't want to play anymore, or complain, or stop listening and stop trying to learn. And I think this adventure would remedy some of those problems. That's some more of the story in there. Um, so it's basically how every campaign has this historical war that changes it, and they've got these grizzled warriors who are now NPCs for the players to go through. This adventure is that war. There's also a character in my. So, this legendary druid. I've had this concept for a long time, and it was actually the premise for my very first campaign, which has inspired me to start writing campaigns, and that's where I came up with starting to make Charu. And that character, without revealing too much of the story, the legendary druid, for those who remember the legends, are or was a person who sacrificed themselves to close the veil or close the bridge that gaps these two realms, the realm of the fiends and realm of man, and saved the world or saved the material plane from the corruption of fiends. There's obviously more to the story that would get revealed later on. Don't really want to get into too much of the details and possibly spoil anything. Maybe as other adventures come up, we'll see more and more of the legendary druid. And with this material war and where it ended, we have a setting. The final battle for the material war rather, fought in the Valley of Blades, which in my setting is currently it's called, or today it was called, the Valley of Blades. But we call it the Valley of Blades because that's where the last stand was. That's where the final battle was. That's where all these fallen soldiers are. All of this weaponry and just this cavern, canyon, just carved into the earth from all of the different fighting and everything for the fiends and from man, just all kind of death in that valley, but they call it the Valley of Blades now. with the Valley of Blades, in my setting, we have several different new races or new ancestries for players to choose from. And this should not be part of the story. And this will go back to, where is it? Here. The primer that I'm going to release with Chara. With inside this setting primer, it's going to have all these playable ancestries or new heritages for all these players to choose from. One of them is a direct connection or direct result of this war and all this latent magic that is condensed and just formed over the Valley of Blades, and animated some of the nature and some of the bones that were left in the valley, creating a heritage of people called the Grim Willows. And this is kind of, at the same time, this is a story of the material war and this hugely historical creation of, or saving from with the legendary druid. It's also this origin story for some of these heritages who, until this material war, until these fiends started to bleed into the world of Chara, they kept to themselves and let the more, I don't want to use the word civilized, but more advanced, no, say the bigger cities, they just kind of want to be themselves. Well, during the mundane realm, or sorry, during the material war, they didn't have a choice. They had to be involved or they would lose their homes. So we started to see all these different heritages and ancestries from that. And it's part of it. So let me get this out for the Grim Willows and then I can explain a little more about them. So there's the first one, Grim Willows. Sure. Yeah, see, this is why we don't change things. You'll notice I'm not the best writer. I'm not the best grammatically. No, that's not what I wanted to say. Don't ever completely trust what Google says or what Word says. It's not always correct. Let's do it this way. All right, that's hopefully a little better. Yeah, more social, I guess, Kier. I just meant like they keep to themselves. They don't want anything to do with society. I guess would be a better way of putting it. Social, yeah. Mm, yes, editors are always great. Yeah, that's definitely going to be something that puts some kind of difficulty on it. Don't want to speak too much to that because I don't know personally, but I can imagine. All right, just kind of getting my ideas out. Obviously, this is the first part of any any part of writing. Just get your ideas out onto the paper. Don't worry about how it sounds. Don't worry about what it looks like. As you can tell, I'm constantly changing things, constantly going back, constantly rewriting. No, this sentence I don't like. Maybe this could be different. Always do that. It's just how I've always done. See, go back and I don't like it doesn't stand out enough. Now I know that's a thing. Now I know, okay, my eyes will go there. Same with all of the different bold or italics or underline, bold and underline. It's just different ways that my eyes catch things. All it really is. All right. So story. Anything else you need to add to the story? Let's see. In the Return of War, when the demons and devils from the realm of fiends could cross the veil into the mundane realm. Warfronts make their last stand while the legendary druid performs their ritual to close the veil once more. The final battle for the material war is fought in the Valley of Blades. Alright, so we've got a couple different things. I'm going to some setting stuff here. No major things, bold and underlined in my head. So, couple different setting ideas. No, I want it this way. Where is it? Valley of Blades. Bold. Keep it together. I will do it that way. Now, I don't have my map here of my continent to show you. I have it on my other computer, just not on this one that I have for streaming. And that is what I'm pulling up right now, just so I can see where the Valley of Blades is. There we go. Alright, so Valley of Blades, there's that. I also need Iron Crest. Some of these locations, like I mentioned in I've got four previously released adventures. I've slowly been cementing the concepts of cities and my setting in those adventures. They are drag and drop adventures. You can put them in your own settings, but it helped me form my continent in my head and cement where things were, because it's a released piece of content. Now I can't change those ideas as easily as I would like to. So there's a couple of these cities that are going to be important for the setting that I've already talked about. Ironcrest is one of them. Honor is another one. These would probably be the two biggest ones I've already talked about. For Honor, this was in Visions of Vanity. And let's do this way. Ironcrest. Hopefully I have these correct. For me, I'm just gonna put them down as the adventures I have them connected to, maybe the nation they're part of. So Honor in my setting in Charu is part of the nation called Loith. Loith Empire. And Ironcrest is part of the Atrilon Kingdom. Not really important for you guys to know what they are. It's in my head. Just doing some quick things. Back up. Like I said, constantly, for some reason, I feel like going back up, reading through things slowly, quickly. Some parts rereading. Okay. So story, I'm going to put down some other ideas, kind of bullet pointed out, so that I can go back and write things in detail when I fully do this. So during the material war. So first thing that comes to mind is how did they pierce the veil? How were they able to do that? So from here, I could have put a couple more detailed things. I will put fiends. So some of my stuff in my setting, it's not original. It's pretty tropey. The demons are reaching out to those who feel like they're not 100%, feel like they don't have anybody in the world. So this thing starts talking to them. Well, they make a connection, make a friendship with this thing, and before they know it, they're got some kind of fiendish pact to them. And we'll get more into that later. Maybe not today, but later. I do plan on streaming, as I mentioned, for 2 hours. I don't know how regular this is going to be, but this adventure I am going to stream. And 2 hours is probably going to be my limit for what I can manage. But 2 hours here, 2 hours there. especially with things going on in the world today. Maybe more sooner than later. Who knows? But I will always post it. You've got my social media stuff there. Twitter, at Pyronide. If you feel like following me on Instagram, it's Pyronide_press. And if you are feeling super, super helpful, there's always Patreon. Pyronide Press there as well. Do not feel obligated to go to Patreon, especially now. Keep your money. But anything helps, even if it's just sharing. All right, back to the adventure. What else can we do? They were influenced to perform rituals in key locations around the continent in order to weaken the veil. In my setting, you'll keep hearing me say the veil. That's basically my like divine gate or the barrier between this world and the next. It's the thing they need to move between in order to go from realm to realm or plane of existence to plane of existence. So what am I calling it? No, Monday realm. Over time, these different cultists, they formed an organization called what am I calling it? Obsidian Chain. That's it. Yeah, definitely, Kier. The veil between the mortal plane and the veil between the greater fairy. Yeah, very much Celtic mythology. All right, Obsidian Chain. That's what I was doing. Old, where are you? I'm just gonna put this here. Remember it. Let's go back here. Or it wouldn't be the people of Char, it would be starting to call themselves. Heavy chain like bracelets made of obsidian. Let's say jewelry. I've always liked the aesthetic of like the giant jewelry, very very reminiscent to anime, like or video games like Street Fighter, Chun-Li's bracelets, the giant, almost manacle like jewelry. It's kind of like that aesthetic, so put it into the obsidian chain. Major last stand, and druid performed ritual. Okay, so where do you perform it? Sorry. So we have this legendary druid character. Basically, this legendary druid and his advisors. It's kind of like an adventurer's party. So in my head, the way that it works is this adventuring party. They performed this ritual, and because of that, became this legend, similar to how all of our adventures go when we play tabletop adventures. The party goes out, they do this amazing thing, and they become the heroes or the villains. But they're always remembered. So, kind of use that as an homage, maybe. Now we have the legendary druid. Yeah, definitely comically oversized bracelets. But still fashionable. Comically oversized, but fashionable. Who are these advisors? So, and I wrote about this legendary druid, and some of the feedback I got was should stop using their, give them whatever gender they are. And in my setting, I've especially with the legendary druid, I've because they're a legend, I've always wanted to leave it ambiguous. To maybe we don't know. Nobody really knows. This is 500 years ago. People don't really have that many stories about this person. So I've always left this character ambiguous. And that way it leads to anybody who can see themselves in this character can put themselves in that shoes or look up to this person. I've always seen it more accessible that way. I understand why, grammatically or politically correct wise, but I'm not sure if it fits in this particular situation. Every other situation, absolutely. But I don't know. Writer's choice, maybe. Maybe I can get advised on that too, but for now, I'm leaving it at that. But their advisors were, in the past, another druid who was their wife. And again, leaving it ambiguous. Female, we could say, or no, wife, spouse, better, ambiguous. Let's see. They had their mentor. Now, the mentor I know is going to be a cleric. Let's say priest if you're not playing 5th edition. Some kind of holy figure, could be a cleric or a paladin. And I believe that was it. Yeah, just 3 people. Legendary druid, their spouse, their mentor. This one I know. is a druid. That one is solidified. There's reasons for that. But again, spoiler territory. But maybe we'll get into it if we have time. Or if they'll keep writing adventures, who knows? Let's see, prone on the ground before this. And this is part of writing as well, is I have this sentence I want to write, and then I get halfway through it and forget the wording I had in my head, or I think I might have something better, and I just need to keep rereading it until my brain clicks into order again. So give me a second. You probably noticed this a couple times already. There we go. Separates from the front lines and is never seen again, which leads, never seen again, which leads into the legend. This druid comes in. Oh, I forgot to mention that part, so I'll get to that. This druid comes in the middle of this material war and says, I know how to stop the demons, follow my lead, and has your typical, like I mentioned, he is, or they are, or she is, this group of people, this legendary druid, inserted themselves into the war like any other party would in tabletop. They come in, they go, we know what's happening. We have more information than two wars that are fighting. Follow us and we will save the day. We will be the heroes. So they come in, they get the following of both nations to fight against the fiends. They say we know how to fight them, we know how to banish them. But in the middle of this final battle, just as everything seems to be getting pivotal, they disappear. But shortly after, the demons disappear, which leads to the mystery and behind this legend. I should probably point it out now too. It makes sense in my head, and I'm terrible with explaining things. But given time, I can get it out and hopefully make sense of it. Bear with me, I know my rambling is of a madman level. Hopefully it makes somewhat sense. Let's do this one. Major players from the, I don't want to say celestial, but that's kind of the only thing here. Who are these major players? Who knows? I haven't decided that yet. I just know that I want some of my pantheon also bleeds into this. So who are those? I don't know. I'll work out those details later. If they come up in this adventure, then I will figure it out. If they don't, they don't. All right. Settings. Okay. So now I've got some of the major parts of the story laid out. I know I want demon types. I have my basic information. I think what I'm going to do now, some setting stuff, Valiant Blades, which is in, finish this off here, look at my map, the curators, yeah. So in my setting, like I mentioned before, just recently actually, I have my own pantheon. In this pantheon, the curator is one of my deities. They belong to the um, Athlon pantheon. Loyth Empire has their own pantheon, and there's another nation of people that isn't really going to be touched upon here, but they have their own beliefs. But this curator is rumored to have created the world of Charu and created the mountains that split the two nations of Echelon and Loyth almost perfectly. And the way that the mountain ridge looks, it looks like a traditional king's or queen's crown. So they call it the Curator's Crown Mountain Range, or the Curator's Crown Range. Now, during this, during the Material War, the Curator is going to be one of those people who is witness there. I know that much so far. Who they are, what they look like, that I haven't really figured out. I just know this entity is going to be there. And their power is so immense that in one of their most devastating attacks, they cut through the big front line of the fiends and the men and all the fighting and try to end the war. But instead, what they do is they create this canyon inside this inside the valley of the mountains. Well, this canyon becomes the Valley of Blades. So this destruction that I talked about before that bleeds into the Grim Willows, that is all because of the curator's magic that's latent in this ability. Creates what I call a nexus, a nexus nest, I think I call it. I can't remember. I have to look at my notes. But these nests are basically what birth these Grim Willows, which is when the magic just condenses, like I said, around whatever nature grows and the bones of the living. So in my head, in my setting, these Grim Willows, they are, like I said above, they're caught between the living and the dead. They're not quite either of them. And physically, they look cross between a skeleton and Swamp Thing. In my setting, I've got these two different Swamp Thing style playable races or playable ancestries. And one of them is a magical essence that creates these plant-based people. And the other one is a nature-based plant people. Grim Willows are the magic influenced ones in my setting. Located in the Curator's Crown range. I want to bold this. Put the quotes on it. That's what makes sense to my eyes. Nope. Alright, so what I want to do now is what I typically do is I've seen a bunch of people talk on YouTube or Twitch or wherever, people creating their own adventures, people like Runehammer or WSD20 or Black Magic Craft. They've talked about the 5-room design, and that's something I've always done myself as well, partially because of their influence on the way that I DM, but also because it's a really, really good premise of one adventure, one session. And that's what a one shot is. It's one time at the table playing. So now I've got to take all this information that, yeah, it sounds like I've got lots of it, which I do in my head, but now I need to make it understandable for one night of playing for 3 to 4 hours. What I usually estimate to one session. So with that, I have got not exactly rooms, but 5 anchor points to my session or anchor points to my setting. And I'm going to start to flesh some of those out here. So let's do anchors. First one, it starts, I know I want to start in the middle of the battle, in the thick of the climactic battle. Let's see, how can I say this? And I'm very particular with how I write my things, which is why I always go back and rewrite things over and over and over. Even if I think I'm happy with it, 2 hours later, I might not be happy and I might go back and edit it again. 2 hours later, I'll edit it another time. This is how my brain works. Thick of battle. There we go. Climax of the Serial War. Serial Wars. Final battle. Yes, it's one thing. I know that from there, part of it is going to be, and I don't know if this is going to be part of the anchor or not, but I want to make note of it and give myself some more room to see. Let's do players will jump from perspective to perspective of iconic. Don't want to say heroes because it might also be demons. So iconic player, people, figures. Fighting in the battle. So to me, what that means is 1 minute you could be fighting as one of those demon types that we were thinking of, and maybe the scene is that demon dies. One of the, whether it's an Athlon soldier cutting through it or they explode in some kind of magical fire, that body is destroyed and the consciousness of the player will go into another body. And they might be able to choose, which gives us different viewpoints of this war, which then, again, if you remember our reveal, I'll go back up to it. At the end of this adventure, turn to one or more of the players and explain how their characters have started adventuring to find the meaning of their ominous dreams that they have been having recently. So, they have these dreams of this consciousness going from person to person fighting in this war, and maybe one or two of these key figures or iconic figures in the fight see some important detail or see the legendary druid running towards some kind of cave entrance. Well, later on in the campaign, when it gets to the point of maybe the war restarts, because that is a possibility for the setting that I have, it's one of the ones I like to do. If you go into Prospects of the Forgotten One, that is the actual beginning of my storyline for this. So you can go from this directly into Prospects of the Forgotten One, and it's basically the war restarting. The Obsidian Chain are starting to collect followers again, starting to bridge the gaps between the Vales, and demons are coming through. Well, maybe when that campaign comes to its climax, they remember something from these dreams in session 0 of, oh, I remember the legendary druid. He was going towards the curator crown, and there was this cave entrance near the base of 2 trees that looked like an X, or some other thing that the DM can explain. But maybe this pivotal moment they have a connection to session 0, and now they have a little bit more information, and it makes this nice little circle from start of the campaign to the end of the campaign, or climax of the campaign. So that's how my brain always works. I always try to connect stories. So connect from one thing to the next thing to the next thing. Anyways, like I said, I ramble. Let's get back to writing. So next, anchor. So I just jump from perspective. I could do that. See, going back and changing what I like, what I don't like. Said it might not be part of the anchors, but it might be part of this anchor. Do that way. Okay, next part, next scene. Oops, that way. Next, not necessarily the scene, but major part of this one shot. They're fighting. From there, the curator. So, as I said, I don't know what they look like now, but because I'm making it part of this adventure, I have to think of those things. And I will do that later. It's not important for now. I just need to know that character, that entity, that being of great power, because they are a deity. They're going to be present, and it's part of my anchors. Let's see, where's this going? So this scene I know is part of it, which it could go from the first part of our adventure is this part here. This could be maybe a small encounter, or maybe even just theater of the mind, minion style, one hit, one kill, make these characters or make these fiends feel more powerful than they are, whether they jump into the perspective of a fiend and they start killing humans, and then the fiend dies and they jump into the perspective of a human, and or not human but humanoid, and start to kill, one shot, one hit, one kill, start killing fiends left, right, and center. But at some point, that scene or that section is going to be stopped when this curator sends his attack. And this might be a point where, in my head, the battlefield is wiped clean, or not clean, but mostly clean of the fighting. And there's this moment of destruction and awe inspired from the magic and everything and the devastation that was brought from the attack. And there's this moment of clarity of something is missing, or this isn't going to end, or something's different. And then the perspectives are pulled. So perspectives are pulled. Underground into the chamber with the legendary druid. So this whole Charu setting and this legendary druid and the material war, this is my very first campaign that I did with a couple of friends of mine. And I'm using it to jump into writing adventures for 5th edition or writing my own content. And it's an easy thing to do. You can take your own settings, because even if you pick up a book like Curse of Strahd, you pick up a book and you play Curse of Strahd one time, same friends, and then you go through the campaign, finish it, kill Strahd. Next session or next campaign, same friends, even the same characters could play that scenario, that story, thousands of different ways. As the storyteller, you might put in your own input, change some things, add things, take away things. That's what makes this game, as or not just Dungeons and Dragons, but this hobby, as extensive as it is. It's endless. And that is such an important thing to me, like this creative influence that we can have, this moment of being able to just let loose and create and write things. It's always been interesting to me. Change things, even take your own movies. I wish this movie had a different ending. Well, write it. Maybe this character would be different if they was told from this perspective or that perspective, or maybe they're only a foot taller. How would that change their life? There's lots of creative moments that you could take and go with and run with and write with. And that's always been my inspiration. Oh, I'm just noticing my chat jumped a lot there. Yes. Yeah, living your own adventure book. Yeah. And that's always been what's inspired me. Is that choose your own adventures. I remember reading those when I was a kid, and like you get to the end of the page and you're running and you find a chest. Do you open the chest? You find a red potion and a blue potion. If you choose the red potion, go to page 206. If you choose the blue potion, go to page 1. And you choose your potion, Go to page 1, drink the blue potion, you now die. Start over. Or you go to page 200 because you chose, no, that was a bad idea. I don't want to die. So you go and drink the red potion. And you feel healthy, you feel strong, you can now gain 2 HP and some magic happens. The Choose Your Own Adventure books were amazing. I remember there was some Goosebumps ones, and there was some other ones that I had that I don't remember the creator of. Anyways, let's get another anchor point. Got about another 10 or so minutes. Hopefully I can get another anchor point done. Stop my rambling, get some writing done. Let's see. So now that we're in the perspective of a legendary druid, I know that the ritual is happening. Yes, exactly. Red means stop, but in this case, red means health, which means it's a good thing. Blue, I don't know why I chose blue. But it could be anything. Blue, typically in the world of tabletop RPGs, mana. Red, health. Diablo, old school. It's your game though. It's your world. You choose. Maybe it's the other way around. Maybe blue is life. Red is death. Ritual being performed by legendary druid. And is interrupted by because remember what I said here. Let's see. Anything with messaging with conversational perceptions with my players. Yeah, definitely. I always like pitching it to, what do you think? What do you like to happen? What do you want the answer to be? What are you trying to do? Roll with it. I remember messing with players is always the fun part of being a DM. As long as you're not just, I kill you because I'm bored. My favorite thing is one of the sessions I was playing, I was running a horror-ish track through the woods. There's this heavy mist that these players were going through. And the way that I was describing it, one of the players said in character, it's really creepy. I don't like being here. I want to go back to the tavern where I can get some food and get some rest. Well, as a DM, I took that as your character is not in the moment. Your character is thinking about their fear. And I turned to the player and said, roll a wisdom save. We're playing 5th edition at the time. Roll a wisdom saving throw. He rolls a 5. Doesn't know why. Now he starts panicking. Why is the DM getting me to roll a wisdom saving throw? And I turned to him and I just said, you think you see something in the corner of your eye swim through the mist. You turn and it's gone. And in my head as the DM, this is just me messing with him, getting in that character's head of, to me, you said you were scared. Let's play the scared angle. Well, that player immediately turns around and goes, stop. There's something in the mist. Look, everybody stop what you're doing. Look around. We're not alone. And the party stopped and they looked for what he thought something was, or he thought something was there. They looked for this thing for 20 minutes. I drop on my knees and I look under the fog. Do I count the feet? How many pairs of feet do I see? Enough for the players, nothing else. Okay, well, I climb a tree. Is there anything in the foliage of the tree? Nope, you guys are alone. What did you see? I don't know. It was so quick, and it just goes on and on and on. It's my favorite part. I never do that, but I created one town where the good and evil peoples are all working together for defense against the environment and NPC threats out in the world. Yeah, and that's kind of like what this adventure is, where if you look at the nations of people I have, yeah, they always fight. The Echelon Kingdom and the Loith Empire, they are always at war. Always. That's just a static thing, always fighting. So if you look from the perspective of the Echelon Kingdom, they are the good guys, the Loith are the bad guys. Or you spin it around and maybe you drop the players on the side of the Loith Empire, and to them, the Loith Empire is good. The Echelon Kingdom is bad. Well, this, with the demons attacking or fiends attacking, it puts all of that to the side. There is no more good and evil between man. We need to fight together or we will lose our home. So it's kind of this third party, the environment or the NPC threatens out of this world, draws them together to work together. The world of men prevail, hurrah, and all that. Let's see, back on topic here. Again, I ramble. Something you guys will notice. The ritual is being performed by legendary druid, interrupted by the fiend's influence. So, if you remember, up here, where is it? Fiends call out those who are shunned by society or otherwise in exile, left with feelings of belonging and doubt. Then you remember my rambling about the legendary druid coming in, like the adventuring party, and saying, I know how to stop this. I'm not from the Echelon Kingdom. I'm not from the I'm not from the Loith Empire, but I know how to stop these demons. Believe in me. They want to belong. Well, they might not necessarily agree with that. They might not necessarily believe that the legendary druid is who they say they are, can do what they do. So maybe there's this doubt. And maybe when he goes off to do it, this legendary druid starts to doubt themselves. Well, that doubt and that wanting to belong allows, because the veil has been broken, Fiend's influence starts to creep into his mind, starts to make him doubt even more. And we start to see that all of this goes into this ritual at the end. I'm glad that rambling is common for streams. Makes me feel more comfortable, I guess. So the ritual being performed. Um, we'll get to the major part of this and then I'll call it a day. So, legendary druid succumbs to the influence of fiends. Yep, let's go. Not the best spelling. Succumbs to the influence of the fiends and is unable to finish the ritual. I have this story written out because it was part of my old campaign, so in my head I know where this is going. I liked this turn. I thought it was unique. Some of my players thought it was a little gimmicky and tropey, but I think for session 0 it works fine. And druids. spouse is forced to finish the ritual. Now I'm going to get into a little faster point form stuff because this is going to be probably our last fight. So if you think, instead of talking about the 5-room design, and I'm actually going to put that here so I don't forget. 5, I don't want to say room, but 5 stages. 5-stage design. Stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. So maybe a bigger battle or the beginning of a battle. Or beginning of the climax, we'll say. Part 4 would be the big fight. 5 is kind of your fallout, what's happening after, what's left. And part 5, I'm thinking, is going to be the connection between this history and the characters, and going into session 1, which bumps our 5-stage design to more of a 4-stage design. So stage 3 might be the fight, or the lead into the final fight, and part 4, stage 4, would be the fight itself. So setting that up, I'm going to do a couple little bullet points, kind of get it out of the way, and we'll call it wraps up to that, I think. Leonard, spouse forced to finish the ritual because of the influence, fiendish influence, we'll say. Tax. We'll say advisors because that's what I said. Above. So this legendary druid is actually corrupted by the influence of the fiends, and they turn and they attack. So their spouse, this other druid, is the only person who can finish the spell or finish the ritual. But now they have to fight their loved one, and the mentor has to fight or defend. All this comes to the climax. And that's our final battle, is the 3 of them, or maybe there's a demon extra or something else, other magical, crazy stuff. Because again, this is the climax of a huge war, and it's supposed to be the catalyst that sends off session 1. So, want to make these feel strong. Let's see. And attacks. Okay, part 4 is the fight. What's going on? There we go. Again, wording needs to be particular. The real final battle. Underground. Amongst loved ones. Now, I know this is going to be done as more of a combat with skill check to maintain ritual. Maintain ritual for X rounds to complete banishing fiends. And what they don't know is it also blocks out the celestials. Because they're just closing the veil. They're not banishing fiends, they're closing the veil again. They're closing the barrier between the realms. And that's where we get our influence. Like I said, fiends, way up at the top, fiends and Aasimar, they are more of a blessing or a curse in my setting. Where did I put that? I don't think I did. Maybe I did somewhere. Nope. Thought I had that. Oh well. In my setting, tieflings and Aasimar are more of a curse of a bloodline. They're not an ancestry, or not a whole set of being or a set of people. Anybody can be a tiefling. Anybody can be an Aasimar. It's an alteration to the ancestry blood. So you could start as a dwarf, and maybe you get cursed by a demon, or somebody in your blood, maybe your parents, your grandparents, or whoever, somewhere in your bloodline, your family was cursed by demons, which means that yes, you are dwarf or dwarven, but you have a slightly redder skin. It's thicker, and maybe you've got a little bit of a horn stub, some kind of weird resistance to fire, and you have this general demonic presence about you. And opposite to the Celestials, you're blessed by the Celestials, or somebody in your family was blessed by the Celestials. So your complexion becomes a little bit more fair, more pale, more that um, celestial being. You become like an angel. You glow in the sun. You um, people tend to follow you or believe you or fall under your glamour, so to speak, when you start talking. So you have a more influence with your words. All these kind of things. That's what's left from this war. So maybe going back to the players, maybe one of these players say they want to play a tiefling or they want to play a Aasimar. All of that would need to be explained to them, and then now they have all this information as to why that happens. Well, it's because they closed the veil, and that's more of a blessing. Blah 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 blah. Before, all right, so Fallout. Into that here. Ritual is complete. Because it's in the past, it is set in stone. We know what happens, kind of. I don't want to. I don't want to say cemented. Could be interesting to say that it didn't happen. But for this, we'll say ritual is maintained. That's kind of what the we'll just say complete. So that's what I'll do for now. Creating legendary oak. Yes, I know I haven't said anything about the legendary oak, but the legendary oak is the legend of the war. Nobody knows what happened. They don't remember the legendary druid who created the legendary oak. The story is always told, the legendary oak, it's what protects the barrier of man, or what creates or protects the veil. And this oak represents the veil, basically. But what people don't know is it is part of this ritual the legendary druid did. And there's more that when I start writing it and flesh out, I will reveal later. Create a legendary oak. Create a legendary oak. We'll stop. Finish there. Perspectives. Oh, I just remember perspectives. So for this final fight, what could be fun into what's wrong? Perspectives. Perceptives. All right. So yeah, the perspectives. They are what is being revealed, or how the history is being revealed to the players. So the perspectives are pulled underground. They're thrust into these bodies, and they suddenly know they have to create this veil, or create this ritual, maintain it, hold it so that they can banish these fiends, unknowingly the Celestials, back to their homeland or homeworld. But there's one less than the party is. So if the party has 4 people, then there would be 3 good people and the legendary druid who turns and fights the people. So now you've got 3 of your players who are fighting the bad guy, and 1 of your players who is the bad guy. And yes, it creates kind of a PvP scenario, which most people would be against. And I do agree with that. But in this situation, it's part of the history. It's a different scenario. It's not my character versus your character. It's these 2 other people. And it's kind of fun to jump into other people's scenarios. And maybe part of it is perspectives change every round. So now you had 3 against 1. Next round, different 3 people, or it's a different villain, or it's a different character driving the villain or Jaegering the villain. And then every next round, different villain. So everybody has that as well. And I think that balances out or helps that feeling of me against you instead of it being us against, or us being played in this scenario. I think that would be a different climax or a different final fight to a one-shot adventure. We don't really see that often because people play my character, your character. I do what I want, you do what you want. Right. So I want the perspectives to float and just be in the moment. They leave the bodies of whoever's left after the ritual has been finished and witness the final moments of the war, of the material war. And at this moment, player or players wake up from dream. And that's kind of where this should end. There's going to be more to it that I add. And then I have to flesh it out, write each section. Maybe there's traps along the way. But at this point, I've got my skeleton done. And you can see, last one I wanted to talk about, players wake up from the dream. This is your stereotypical, you wake up and it was all a dream. But it puts it in a different context, which again I think changes the dynamic of it. Which, yes, it's tropey, but it's got a different twist on it. It's not you had these you had this situation with your characters, and then you wake up and your characters are fine. It was all a dream. Ha 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 ha. No, it's you woke up from a dream witnessing this far thing of fiends fighting celestials and these two kingdoms coming together and fighting this thing. There's this huge war, this huge fight. You wake up in a cold sweat and you go, why did I have that dream? Why did that feel so real? Talk to some of the people around in session one of, do you know of any stories that talk about fiends invading our home? And maybe the older people or the elder of the village says, I remember my grandfather talking about some oak, but I don't have that much information about oak trees. Maybe go to the big city and consult the libraries. And it sends the players off onto this world. Well, maybe part of it is, okay, I'm going to go to the library in the next city. So they decide to pack up their things and go. They're going to have the last meal over at the tavern. They meet up their friends. You have your trophy beginning of everybody meets in the tavern. You go from there. But that is where I am going to stop today. I don't know when I will do it again. I was thinking tomorrow, possibly. I don't know. But this adventure I am going to stream. I'm going to spend 2, maybe 3 hours. I know I went a little longer than I wanted to today. Probably 2.5 hours, I think. Yeah, 2 and 45. But I've started now, so it's a little easier to continue going. But I will post on all my social medias when that's going to be. I'll keep everyone informed. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram if you want to keep up to date with how I write through, or my process of writing is rambling as it is. But that's it. So I guess I will see you all next time. Goodbye. Out. And I will end the stream.